Hi everyone, welcome to the J&J Show. We have a full show today. A lot has been going on. I'm not sure if you guys woke up this morning at 7 a.m. to watch the coronation of King Charles over in Britain. I certainly did not. I don't know if you guys did. Let's see, 1 second. There you go. Sorry guys. So yeah, I'm not sure, Joseph, if you and John, if you guys woke up and saw the coronation of King Charles today. I certainly didn't. I had better things to do. I think I woke up like around 10, 11 a.m. today. Slept in. But we're going to discuss that today with you guys. And we're also going to discuss about the many things that happened in the Florida legislative session. It just ended, and there's many, many good things coming down the pipeline. But first, let's go to that coronation. This was the view from Buckingham Palace this morning. King Charles and his now queen, Camilla. What do you guys think about that?
So it's interesting and it's really funny because, on Twitter, a lot of American citizens were raving about the coronation of the new king and his queen. And I've never understood this because, again, we fought a war of independence for this exact reason, to not have a king and a queen. And it's just funny to watch so many Americans, millions and millions of Americans, fawn over this sort of stuff, over people. Like, they're just people that have blood in them, that it's the same exact blood as you and I, but because they call themselves royalty, they get away with this stuff, and we have, news outlets and people fawning over it. So it's pretty crazy to me. I don't put any sort of person, king, queen, politician, president, anyone on a pedestal like that, and it's really weird to see so many people doing that.
What about you, John? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I it couldn't be any further from something I would be interested in. I'd rather watch a cat show nationals, performance awards than this clown show. For me, it's just so foreign from what we represent, right? It's so contrary to what the United States represents. I'm just not a big fan. The animals, the leopard skins, the big crowns, they look ridiculous. It looks like Halloween in the UK. I mean, I honestly, I don't get it. I'm offended. Like they're better than others. That's why Hillary Clinton lost her election, because people just couldn't stand how entitled she was in her own mind to be the president of the United States, right? And we see that locally, right? That the person who Ron DeSantis beat, he also had this whole air of being like entitled to be the governor of Florida, and he got the pants beat off of him because of it. So we're not about aristocracy or some nobility, noble class, hereditary structures in the United States. And I get it. It's kind of fun. It's entertaining. It only happens once. It's kind of like a comet that flies around every 72 years or something. But I have no interest in it. I think it's kind of silly. And at this stage, I mean, it's 2023. You think they would have been more toned down, right? You think that they would be more normal, they would be more practical about it, but they pulled out all the stops, people wearing bear hat rugs on their head, and and I mean, it's crazy, and it just goes to show how antiquated that whole idea and belief is.
So I have a proposal for us. I think we all buy ourselves crowns and we declare ourselves kings of the entire world. And who's going to stop us, right?
I can't even be named king in my household. I mean, I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, but there's absolutely people here in Osceola County who think that they're kings of the county, and so I mean, to me, it's what I fight against. So to me, it's just a big silly show. It's very childish.
And I just find for the British people, this is all they know, right? So this is normal to them. They're subjects or whatever. I don't understand that. But, for us, thank God for the founding fathers. Otherwise, we'd be like all tuning into this and saying, long live the king, hail the king. Thank God. I told people, hey, today's a good day to read. Grab your copy of the Constitution and start reading it, because if it wasn't for this, we'd be in the crowd. We'd be right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'd be like on Fox News where I think Farage was saying that it was emotional and magnificent and so on. And I mean, it's rich. Don't get me wrong. It looks like they got a lot of money, but they don't even have more money than everybody else in the world. And the idea that people are the subjects, like you said, Jose, I mean, man, I'm nobody's subject. I'm God's subject. That's it. So, and my wife's, and that's not even by choice anymore.
And I heard, I don't know, I forgot what the figure was, but I heard that this was, even though they scaled it down, comparatively to, I guess, other kings and queens who've been coronated, it still cost them about $120 million. What else could you do? What else could you do with that money? And I heard, I don't know, I forgot what the figure was, but
That's
I heard
nuts.
that this was,
I mean,
even though they scaled it down, comparatively to, I guess, other. What else could you do with that money? Sorry about that. Guys. I heard, I forgot what the figure. Do you? Oh, I think. Are you one of you guys playing the show on your phones? Comparatively, I guess, other.
Nope.
No.
What else could you do? Give me a second. Yeah, because I'm hearing my same feedback on you guys.
I can hear. I heard it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could hear it.
So, anyways,
I don't have Facebook.
Let's move along. What else is in the news? Did you hear about Matt Gaetz and AOC teaming up?
Yes.
So I love this. Really quickly, I think it's great, and for two reasons, right? I believe what Matt Gaetz said, that she's not corrupt. She may not be the smartest representative in the country. She may not be the most well-versed in economics or in policy or anything on the other side of the bar, but she is not, I would imagine she's not corrupt. She's just not bright, right? Matt Gaetz is a smart guy. And these two people here, I would say that it's great that they're attacking the corrupt class, the people that we were just talking about with the crown, right? And the nobility, these politicians that think that they're an American aristocracy. I like the fact that they're limiting their ability to make cash while they're in the people's house.
Yeah, and so what they're doing is they're teaming up to try to pass a bill that would end stock trading while being a member of Congress, which is fantastic. I don't know how it passes. I don't see it passing, unfortunately, just because there are so many people in Congress that they do this. They get insider info. And while if you and I did something like this, we would get locked up and thrown in jail like Martha Stewart. These people do it openly. We've seen Nancy Pelosi and her husband make millions and millions of dollars doing stock trading, and they have insider info. And there was an interview I saw either last year or the year before where a representative was talking on CNN, and he was talking about how he had gotten info right before the economy shut down. And he was like, oh, yeah, we got all this information and we traded a bunch of stocks because of it. That's insider trading. So that to me is just outrageous. So, I hope that it gets passed, but I don't see that it would. But at least I think Matt Gaetz and AOC are bringing some attention to it and calling out these corrupt politicians.
Why do you think it's not going to get any steam? Why is it you think it's not going to get steam?
I think there's too many people in Congress that they want that money. They want that cash. They're too corrupt to really put something forward. We've seen this with other bills before as well, like term limits, for example. There's a lot of people that sign the term limits pledge that say, oh, I support term limits. But when they get to Congress, they realize, hey, I want to be in Congress for 10, 20, 30 years. So they're not actually going to go up to Washington, D.C. and push any sort of actual legislation forward to support term limits. So I think it's the same situation where a lot of these people that are up in D.C., they will talk about it. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I don't support insider trading," but behind closed doors, they're making way too much money doing this.
Joseph, it's interesting you mentioned that you say that these people will go into elected office and say, "Hey, we promise we're going to do this," and then once they're in office, they relent on their promise, right? So there's an organization nationwide, but I can tell you here in Florida, the Republican Liberty Caucus. I know that they're famous for holding elected officials accountable, and one of the things that they do is they'll meet with the elected officials who per se promised. Let's say you said term limits, right? Or they say they're for the Second Amendment, and they're actually for red flag laws. They're against term limits. And what this organization does is they'll meet with them, and they'll present them with an award that says, they sign it, and it's presented to the politician as an oath breaker. And we ask them, hey, please make sure you hang it up on your wall with all the other accolades that you have. Of course, usually ends up in the trash, but it's symbolic enough. They'll post it on their website, all the oath breakers who promised to go against, to vote for term limits, to vote for whatever, right? And then they relent on their promises. So we need more of that. We need to hold elected officials accountable to their word.
Absolutely.
And speaking of elected officials here in Florida, guess what? So the legislative session just ended here in Florida, and there's several bills that we're going to talk about right now that were passed. I know that there was people up in Tallahassee that were protesting, and as you can see, some of them got arrested. Well, we're going to show you what some of the things that they were protesting, and here's a list. And we can start off by talking about the second bullet there. The second bullet and the last bullet, actually, because they're kind of tied together. The second one talks about permitless carry. The last one talks about fining credit card companies because their plan was to track gun owners so they could put them in a list, right? Anytime you make a credit card purchase, the credit card companies assign like a category, and they were going to start putting guns and ammunition and stuff like that on a separate category. And that is kind of dangerous because that could, where is that list going to end up, right? Why are they tracking guns separately? But what are you guys' thoughts on the permitless carry and the credit card company bill?
Well,
John, if you want, you can go quickly, first.
Thanks. I'm a teacher, right? So I spent this year teaching, and for me, I still don't think this goes far enough. As a teacher, I like to be armed. I spent 5 years in the Army. I spent 2 deployments in Afghanistan. If I have a weapon that mimics what some transgressor is carrying when he comes onto campus, my kids are protected by that. So I think it should have been, for me, I'm all about this. This is Second Amendment. And this does not go far enough for me because we still have gun-free zones, which make the most vulnerable people in our state vulnerable still. So I know that they're protesting it, and they were talking about kids in general and how they don't care that our kids are getting shot in the street. Our kids aren't getting shot by, people like me who want to carry weapons, or, I have my concealed carry permit, but they're being victimized by criminals and by crazy people. And so that this doesn't do anything to address that. So, I mean, a lot of people were upset that this didn't go far enough in terms of constitutional carry. But it is what it is. It's a step in the right direction for me.
Yeah. And John, so for me, I agree in terms of it not going far enough. But for me, it has a lot to do with the red flag laws. So, 2018, that was a really big issue that passed in the Florida legislative session in 2018, signed by then Governor Rick Scott. So that, for me, was a big issue. The same thing was raising the age limit to purchase certain type of firearms. So that is my biggest issue with, the permitless carry. But I think it is definitely a big step. It's a right step in the right direction. I'm the same. I have a concealed carry permit. I like to carry wherever I go, whenever I can. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, so I need to have an equalizer. So, I think it's fantastic. And I think the bill fining credit card companies for basically putting gun owners on a list, I think that's great as well. That is something that is very dangerous. That's something right out of the 1930s and 1940s in Germany, where they started putting people on lists. So I think that's also great. Hopefully, those fines are large enough to really make a difference with these credit
Yeah.
card companies. And I think we take what we can, but we keep pushing to make sure that we get the right result in the end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
there should be
guys.
criminal penalties for these guys. If they track me while I'm buying ammo, which I did this 2 weeks ago at the gun show here in Osceola County, I mean, then there should be criminal penalties for somebody tracking me while I'm doing my, just being a normal citizen and doing my thing, and someone's tracking me without my knowledge. There should be criminal penalties.
That's right, I agree. By the way, John, there's another gun show in Orlando on the 20th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. We definitely need to
I
go to
know
that
people
one.
will find me there.
Yes. And listen, the issue I had with this permitless carry bill is that it's permitless carry, but they called it, or they were billing it and promoting it as constitutional carry, which it was not, right? So I support the bill. I don't support what they were calling it, right? Because it's not that. And I think we need a lot of people want constitutional carry, and I think that's why they were advertising the bill as such. But I think that is very misleading, and we don't need politicians to be any more misleading, right? We don't need that. We want the people to trust elected officials. So treat the voters with respect, right? Don't try to fool them and pretend that you're passing something that's not. So that was my issue with the bill. But there's other things in here. Let's see what else. What about this?
While you're pulling that up,
Yep.
you're 100% right, because that's not the only bill that they did that. It's the same with the medical freedom bill, right? It's a very similar situation. The people who brought it, the people that were the genesis of that medical freedom bill, they were completely betrayed by the legislature in terms of where the bill was going. And in order to have something to say that they did it, they passed a bill that was very, very weak. And it's not on this list, but nonetheless, that's exactly what they did. So they were trying to tell all the people at home, the 80% of voters who aren't like us, who are reading exactly what's happened, trying to trick them into believing that something happened that did not.
That's right. Yeah. So again, the message to the legislature is honesty is the best policy, right? Be straightforward.
Yeah.
Don't call a bill something that it's not. So, well, anyway, so we have also this 6-week abortion ban. So this was just recently passed. It was signed by the governor. I believe it's still not in effect because there's a court battle right now. Because previous to this, there was a 15-week abortion ban. So now it's a 6-week, and that'll remain to be settled, even if because the 15-week abortion ban is, and you know what, I really hate calling it an abortion ban. This is protection of life bill is what it is, right?
Yeah. And so this is one that to me is fantastic. I run the defund Planned Parenthood page on Facebook, and this is one that I think is great, and something that I will debate with a lot of conservatives and Republicans on, because there's a lot of them that say that Governor DeSantis, whatever his decision is in 2024, there's a lot of people that don't believe that a candidate that signs a 6-week abortion ban can win on a national level. But if you look just at last year's results, in Ohio, Georgia, and Florida, all 3 governors signed 15-week abortion bans in the middle of their campaigns, and all 3 won in relative landslides. So I don't think that that people understand that there are pro-lifers that will only turn out for candidates that actually support this sort of law. So I don't think writing off a candidate because of that is smart. And I think there's a lot of people that are seeing this and like, okay, there are politicians out there that are actually standing up for life. They're not just going up like we talked about, saying that they're going to stand up and do something about something, but they get to DC or they get to Tallahassee, and they do something completely different than what they said they were going to do. So I think it's fantastic. I hope that it gets through the court system, and we come out on the other side with this ban in effect.
Yep, 100%. I agree. I know, and listen, I am pro-life. I'm 100% pro-life. I know there are some Republicans that are not, right? And one of the things that I always I take note is that if you look at the Democrat Party, right? So at the Democrat Party, if you are for illegal immigration, you're a Democrat. If you are for LGBTQ rights or for drag queens with kids, you're a Democrat. If you're for high taxes, you're a Democrat. If you're for you support BLM, Black Lives Matter, you're a Democrat. It doesn't matter the issue. You don't even have to agree with the other people. As long as there's one issue in which you agree with you're a Democrat. But in the Republican Party, if there's one you disagree on one issue and we start dividing ourselves. You're a rhino, you're a this, you're a that, and it's just like it's amazing how the Democrats come together, but we always split apart, like, oh, you're not a true Republican, you're not a patriot, and we push people away and we push them towards the Democrat Party. So it to me it's just interesting. Some of these issues are in our party, not everyone will support all of these issues. In the party, there's Republicans who are not for Second Amendment. There are Republicans who want to have compassion with illegal immigrants, and some people who are, for abortion or for exemptions. I'm not sure what you would call it, but yeah. Anyways, I just want to make note of that sometimes in the Republican Party we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah,
well, I think it means Sorry, Joseph.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I think it means more to Republicans normally, right? I think the Democrat litmus test is how crazy are you? Are you crazy enough to want to sexualize content for kids? Yes, join us. Are you crazy enough that you want to ban our rights, our God-given rights, and you want to make us into a communist country? Really? You're that far crazy? Yes? Okay, come.
Monarchy.
But for Republicans, it's like, listen, this is our country. We're passionate about it. It's not individual things. It's like, this is our country. This is the identity of our country. While Democrats are focused on their gender identities, we're focused on the identity of our nation. And so these things matter. I agree with you. I think that we're splitting up too much over policy details. I long for the day when we can get into an argument with a Democrat about ideology, right? And just say left or right, and then, talking about small things, not just complete and total craziness, right? I mean, that's the real bad part. So, I think that we have to have compassion. You mentioned compassion. We need to have compassion for one another inside our party and not expect for everyone to be exactly the same. Just if you love your country and your intentions are for the benefit of our country and its people and our citizens, then chances are you're a Republican. If you're a nutcase, you're on.
John, two things. First, we're gonna have to use that quote of yours. You said, "Well, Democrats are worried about gender identity. We're worried about the identity of our country." So we're gonna use that quote. That's a good quote. And the other thing is this. This is what I tell people. Listen, is there anyone in your life that you agree with 100%? And I think not your parents, not your siblings, not your spouse, right? Do you agree with 100%? That doesn't mean you kick them out the door, right? So. Anyways.
Yeah, and for me, I think, there's the old Reagan rule, 80-20. If someone agrees with me 80% of the time, that's someone that I know I can trust to help on 80% of those issues. So that's something that I think we have to start looking at. Obviously, if there's people that are running for office and they claim to be a Republican, but they're to the left on every single issue, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about actual Republicans where, look, I personally support a complete ban on abortion, but I'm not going to turn away a Republican that's like, hey, I think that's too far. I think 15 weeks with exceptions, yada yada. I know that there's not every single person's going to agree with the total abortion ban, and I'm not looking to try to kick them out of the Republican Party. So I think that is something that we have to remain focused on, is making sure that they line up on the issues. We may disagree on certain things on that issue or policy, but if they're lining up in the Republican Party, then we should welcome them with open arms.
One of the things I'm glad that you said that, because one of the biggest things about our country was that we could all at one point agree that killing babies was bad, right? Mm-hmm. Now Republicans are just like, well, when is it okay? When is it not okay? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 15 weeks? Okay, even that discussion, you still are agreeing that this is a travesty upon a life, right? And Democrats are like, no, it doesn't matter. If you're the parent, you should be able to abort your child when they're 2 years old. Well, I mean, I have 3 teenagers. If that was an option, I would have considered it then. But I also have a 10-year-old, and you talk about not agreeing all the time, Jose. I have a 10-year-old who she agrees with me on no matter what I say right now, right? But I know that she's going to become a teenager, and then she'll never agree with me again. So it's about taking your small victories. I think that's 100% right. Don't isolate people from the party because they don't agree 100%. Just, it's if you love this country, if you can agree that an abortion is a travesty, it's the death of a human being that has value, intricate value that is placed in that person by God, then I think that we're all on the same page, right? I mean, and then you go to the details. There's no reason to split the party. I think both of you guys hit the nail on the head.
Well, the next bill that was passed in Tallahassee was about illegal immigration, and I think this has yet to be signed by the governor, but it's been passed, and it talks about one of the things that I do not support, and is this E-Verify thing. Are you guys familiar with E-Verify?
Yeah.
Yep. Can you elaborate a little bit of what that is for the people watching at home?
Yeah. So E-Verify is basically, you have to verify that businesses basically have to verify that the person that they're employing is a legal citizen, and if they don't comply to that standard, then basically they can be fined or shut down.
Yeah, so the reason I don't agree with this E-Verify thing, and I know most Republicans will, and keep in mind, I support strong border security, and but I think this is saying that now businesses are going to act like the sheriff. So what's going to happen right now? What's going to happen? Basically, right now, people are coming into the country illegally, and what are we doing with them? We're giving them we're saying, okay, here's the Social Security. You can go work. You apply for asylum, and go out and work. And you can work wherever. Like you can work at Walmart, Wendy's, wherever you want to work. And that's what's happening. So right now, we're going to have people who are illegals, and we're going to know that they're illegals. And what are we going to do? Are the businesses going to deport? Are we going to do the job for the government? And furthermore, I'm all for a smaller government, right? And why are we're basically telling the federal government, okay, now you have this power over businesses. We're going to make you bigger, more power to you. And I don't think that's the way we should, be moving forward. I think the government should just do its job and secure our borders and get rid of the people, not businesses do their job. The governments ought to do their job. We're sending all this money out to Ukraine. We're spending money on, more IRS agents. What about the border? They need to do their job, and we need to hold them accountable.
I think that's a good point. You do not want a private entity acting as a government entity, right? And you are putting some of the responsibility at the doorstep. And then, there's something to be said about the fact that our federal government is encouraging people to come flood across the border. And now we have a state government saying, well, but you can't hire them. So what does that mean? You're going to create an area where these people are stagnant. And in the end, they're still going to hire illegal immigrants. Companies are still going to do it. They're just going to pay them in cash, and they won't pay any taxes on that money. So it's definitely not, I would say, I do agree with the bill. It's not a great solution for a problem in which these government entities are not speaking with one another. And it has to do a lot with our federal government is a joke right now. and I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I can speculate, but I can't tell you why. There's a reason they're trying to destroy our immigration process, and they're trying to get these people to come flooding into the United States. And I don't know. We can speculate why. We can pretend we know why, but that's the result. Is this, and they're gonna destroy our economy by doing it.
Yeah, and there's a lot more in that immigration bill as well. Not just the E-Verify. I know that on that list it really just highlights that. But one of the things that it also highlights is it includes $12 million from the general fund on a legal immigration program that Governor DeSantis used to send migrants to Martha's Vineyard last year. So more money to basically send the illegal immigrants to these so-called sanctuary cities, which if you've seen in the news lately, what is it, Eric Adams, I think that's his name, the mayor of New York City. He's out. Yeah, he's out there complaining again that, New York City is being overrun by illegal immigrants. So, but he wants to support Joe Biden and the Democrats in D.C. that refuse to close the border. So you reap what you sow, and yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff in that bill that's passed that will help protect the state of Florida from illegal immigration.
I could not be more in favor of DeSantis flying them to Martha Vineyard or anywhere else. I would send them to California, send them to the Bay Area, send them to places like where do all the celebrities live in Hollywood? I would send them there all day long.
Hey guys, and just remember, like just this last week, we had that illegal immigrant who shot a family, right? Mm-hmm. And do you remember what was particular about this guy? And there was a manhunt. He had come here
deported 4 times.
4 times. He had been deported 4 times. So, these people don't care about our laws. Why aren't we securing the border? Why are we passing the buck to companies? I think we just need to do the job at the border security, Homeland Security. What are they doing? Let's hold them accountable. If not, let's get rid of them and let's put someone in there who will. What else?
Thousands of Chinese military-age Chinese men streaming over the border. There's about 150 people who are on the terrorist watch list who have come over the border and have been caught. So God knows how many of them have not been caught. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. It's a crime, and not to mention the thousands of unaccompanied minors who are being raped and victimized there. It's talk about a human crisis. The UN, I'm surprised that they're not talking about our issue at the southern border, but because it's intentional, I guess they're allowed to do it.
Hey, John, I just want to loop you in. You mentioned earlier that you weren't even king in your own house. I just had my daughter come up as you were talking and remind me that, hey, it's time for me to go read her books. I told her we have a few more minutes, so I'm also not the king in my own house. So what else do we have in this coming down the pipeline from the from Tallahassee? Any of these? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I'd really like to touch on 3 of them. I think we could tie in the death penalty for child rapists and the enhanced penalties for fentanyl dealing together, since it was part of the crime bill that Governor DeSantis signed. That's another really 2 big ones. The death penalty for child rapists, I think, is fantastic. And normally, for me, as a pro-life person, I'm typically not in favor of the death penalty, but for child rapists, I think that there's no greater crime on earth than being a child rapist. It's the most disgusting act that one person can do to a child. So I'm all in favor of the death penalty for child rapists, and I think Governor DeSantis did a great job, as did the legislature, getting that passed. And then the same thing with, the fentanyl dealing. The fentanyl is completely out of control. And my girlfriend is a nurse, and we've had conversations about this, and she's told me, the fentanyl that they give out in the hospitals is not the same fentanyl that is being sold and distributed in the streets, because what's being sold in the streets is basically you don't know exactly what is in this stuff, and it's killing a lot of people. We Jose, you and I talked about this during one of our shows previously about the toddler in I think it was like in South Florida at the Airbnb. So that was a fentanyl situation. So it's a very, very dangerous drug, and I think that the increasing these penalties for these dealers is a great thing. I personally would throw them away for life, lock them away. They don't deserve to see freedom and breathe fresh air ever again. That's my opinion. But yeah, that's my thoughts on those two bills.
Joseph, it's funny that you say that you weren't for the being a pro-life person. You weren't from the death penalty. I literally, prior to the show, when you guys invited me on, and thank you both, by the way, for that, I was thinking about I'm in the same exact position as a pro-life person, as a Catholic. I really am pro-life. And so even the death penalty is troublesome for me. But I can't help but celebrate on the inside, internally, this death penalty for and it really should be expanded. I think that if you abuse a child, it should be the most severe punishment in our book, right? Everything, when it's dealing with a child, that factor should add years. It should make people really, if you were going to victimize the child in our community, then you need to pay the price. So I'm in exactly the same position with you on that one. Unfortunately, I'm not in the same position on the fentanyl thing, and it's because I just don't think it's going to do anything, right? In the end, somebody in some kind of desperate shape they're always going to risk selling the drugs. And the reason I know this is because we did the same thing for crack in the 80s, right? When crack was the epidemic, they increased the punishments. It was 3 strikes and you're gone for life. It was, they really tried to do it. And it was actually Joe Biden who was one of the sponsors of that bill. Mm-hmm. And it didn't have any impact on the sale of drugs at all. You know who really should be put in jail for fentanyl is the Chinese manufacturing companies. I think that they should sanction, even Florida, put a sanction on the people who are manufacturing this, and on Mexico, because they're basically sending the raw materials from China into Mexico. And so what we need to do is whenever one of those illegal aliens who's working at a job, and then they go and Western Union and they try to send money back to Mexico, tax that at 50% until they don't allow any more fentanyl to come into Florida. And that would make a much bigger difference with those two. And same thing, China, here's what we're going to do. In Florida, when you send the Western Union to China or Mexico, you're going to pay 50% on it. That's what Trump did. And I think that had an impact. People started changing their tunes. All of a sudden, the guy, the president of Mexico, was flipping tortillas for Trump as soon as he said he was going to do that. And it was no longer a hard stance. So, I mean, I wish that it would work. I just don't have I don't believe that it will. And, and something just for the Christians out there to think about regarding the death penalty. I was recently watching an academic talk about the translation of the Bible, and in the 10 Commandments, most people have it translated as "Thou shalt not kill," and I guess there's a big debate now on whether the word was kill or murder, which it changes the entire philosophy on this death penalty situation. So it's something that was whirling in my mind just prior to coming onto the show. So I appreciate that you mentioned that.
Hey, so John, you mentioned some things I want to talk. But listen, the death penalty. I'm Catholic, and yes, "Thou shalt not kill" or "Thou shalt not murder." To me, it makes no difference. I've always supported the death penalty. The reason is because there are people who kill and they don't even have any regret. They'll laugh about it. They'll do it again in jail if they can, right? And yeah. Why are we wasting our time? Why are we wasting taxpayer money? They admit to doing it. They will do it again. They'll do it in jail. And at this point, what's worth it? Why keep them, spending all this money? So no, I totally support the death penalty. I think you're right on the whole drug. We had the war on drugs, right? Dare to do drugs. Did that work? I'm not sure that it really did the job. But I think this why did they pass this? You know, we're trying to protect kids. We're trying to, anyone really. You know, in that instance, you're right, Joseph. We did talk about that Airbnb where there was a family who came to Florida on a vacation, and they rented a villa, a home, and their baby was crawling on the floor, and there was fentanyl residue from a previous tenant, and it was enough to kill the baby. You know, and it's just terrible, right? So, who's in the end should be punished for this, right? Like, how are we going to get to the cartels? Listen, in Congress, the Republicans are trying to label the cartels as terrorist organizations, and there's opposition to that. I mean, how incredible is that, right? That we wouldn't label a cartel as a terrorist organization. I mean, are they not terrorizing the streets of America, right, with crime? Are they not terrorizing people who are crossing across the border, as you know, forcing them to transfer the drugs as mules, right? So should they not be terrorist organizations? So, anyways, a lot needs to be done. This may be a first step, and we'll see if it works. I doubt that it'll have a lot of effect, like you said, John.
So, Jose, I just want to touch on one thing. So you mentioned the war on drugs, and that is something that is an interesting topic because we had the approach before where, you know, the government would try to crack down on all these different drugs, marijuana, cocaine, shrooms, LSD, certain pills, and opioids. And while we didn't technically have the greatest success, what we've seen over the last decade or so is with the legalization of marijuana, and now certain states are legalizing, meth up to a certain point. They're legalizing shrooms. I know they did that in, I think it was Portland and in Denver as well, and some other states. What we have seen is actually an increase in drug use, especially in marijuana, and we've seen across the board. I think it was over 7,400% increase in hospitalizations in children because there's more access to these drugs, basically. So when the government's coming out, they're legalizing more and more of these drugs, and it's becoming more frequent and more accessible. A lot of people are getting their hands on these drugs, and unfortunately it's having an effect throughout the communities. And from another statistic that I saw, in 2008, there was about, I think it said like 17 million marijuana users, and in today, 2023, there's a little over 50 million people in the United States that use marijuana. So I don't think that is the right approach either, in terms of taking a step back and legalizing a lot of these drugs, including marijuana, because I think we're seeing a really big effect across the nation with them.
No, listen, I'm all for the states to implement their own laws, and if a state wants to enforce laws, I'm all for it. So right now, Florida's doing it. So good for Florida. One of the things, John, that I forgot to mention that you touched is that you mentioned about the Western Union and MoneyGram. So if you remember when Donald Trump said that we were going to build the wall and Mexico was going to pay for it, you remember that, guys? So I thought about that, and I thought that's what he meant. That is called remittances, right? And just so you know, on a yearly basis, every single year. Before I share this, do you remember how much Donald Trump asked for the wall? How many billion? Any of you two guys?
It's $4 billion.
Ooh. I think initially it was 13 billion. Then he lowered it to 5 billion. Anyways, every year it's 40 billion that goes to Latin America alone. 40 billion in remittances. That's people going to their local bodega store, to Publix, anywhere, going to Western Union, and they're sending the money that they earn here from the work, because as soon as you cross the border, you ask for asylum, and they give you a Social Security card, and you can go work, and you can work for 2 years until your asylum case goes through the courts, and before it goes through the courts, as a matter of fact, 90% of the people don't even show up to their court date. They disappear into our country. So anyways, These people are allowed to work because we give them that Social Security because they're here with asylum, and they start earning the money and they send their money back to Latin America. $40 billion leaves our economy every year. Listen, I grew up in Latin America, and I go there every now and then for family weddings, or in unfortunate case that someone that I know passes away, and I'll have to go to a funeral. So I'll have a lot of friends. Every single time that I fly into San Pedro Sula, Honduras, and I'm going, into the city, I see a new bridge, a new overpass, and I'm like, wow, all these interchanges, and I live here in Polk County, and we're always stuck here in Champions Gate on I-4 with this horrific traffic. But over there's new bridges, new highways, new lanes every single time. And I'm like, how is it possible? And it's because we're sending $40 billion every single year to Latin America. So I thought exactly when Trump said, and they're going to pay for it, I thought that's what he meant, that he was going to all of a sudden increase the taxes on that money that's going out. And I think that would be perfect. If all of a sudden the people who are here sending this money are like, wait a minute, it doesn't even make sense economically anymore. Like half of the money that I'm going to send to Mexico gets taxed, then I'm just going to stop doing that. And there's no point in me in coming to. I think that would stop illegal immigration even much more than building the wall.
Yeah, Trump threatened that to the Mexican president at the time, and they caved. They knew that is a bloodline. That is how they exist. I mean, that's more money. It's one of their top line items in their budget is these remittances.
Yeah, I think for some of the small countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, and like Haiti, I think like this remittances, people sending money through Western Union back to their family, is like a third of their economy, like a third of the entire economy. It's just people sending money, if you can imagine that.
Absolutely.
So what else do we have on this list?
So I think the last one that I personally would want to talk about is the penalties on businesses that admit kids to adult live performances. So the legislation came after multiple drag shows were caught on video performing sexual dances in front of children, as documented by Florida's Voice, which is a Florida-based news company. And the legislation would authorize Florida to fine, suspend, or revoke the license of any public establishment that admits a child to an adult live performance that depicts or simulates nudity, sexual conduct, or lewd exposure. So we've seen this sort of behavior not just in Florida but across the nation. But it's become a hot topic here in Florida with these drag show performances. Where you've seen pictures and videos come out where they're sexualizing these children, and they're performing sexual shows in front of children. I've seen kids as young as 2 years old in some of these pictures and videos, and there's a lot of talk about groomers and grooming and what is considered grooming and what's not considered grooming. But it's 100% grooming. And, Jose, you just brought this up on the screen here where the gay pride parade was canceled in Southeast Florida after the anti-drag show law passes. And there was another one that was called off because they couldn't basically do it in front of kids. They would have had to make it 18 plus years old. And so they freaked out and they're like, well, we can't do the show anymore. Well, if you can't do the show because it has to be 18 plus, that tells me you're doing some really inappropriate stuff with children around. So, I'm glad to see something like this go through the legislature. And I know Governor DeSantis has really come down on these businesses for these disgusting shows.
Hey, what are these people protesting? What do you think they're protesting?
I know that there's an abortion protest going on tomorrow. I don't know if this lady had participated in one of those in the Capitol. I'm not entirely sure. I know that they went up there to protest a whole bunch of stuff. There's Nikki Fried, who's now the chair of the Democratic Party here in Florida. She's running around absolutely obsessed with Governor DeSantis and whatever he does. So I know they're doing a abortion one tomorrow. I think that's what they were doing up there. It honestly could have been a mixture of everything. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they were upset about the death penalty for child rapists, because Democrats are just that insane these days. But yeah, I think this bill is fantastic.
Yeah, something that the Democratic leader, Fentress Driscoll, said. She's from Tampa, and she was saying that this is all DeSantis and the Republican legislature being tone deaf. And imagine being so obtuse that you're talking about tone deafness when DeSantis won by 20 points, right? I mean, he obliterated. You're talking about Nikki Fried being obsessed with DeSantis. She got obliterated by a guy who has the personality of a potato, who got decimated by DeSantis by 20 points. How irrelevant is she, right? And the same with this Driscoll person. She's talking about tone deafness. Democrats could not be more tone deaf across the country. 75%, and by CNN's number, 75% of America thinks the country's going in the wrong direction. If you were to poll Florida, you'd have the majority of Floridians saying Florida's moving in the right direction. So, I mean, the Democratic Party in Florida is not only tone deaf, they're tone dead. They have no idea what's going on. The people have been revolting against the Democratic Party here. Even left-leaning counties like Osceola County, and I represent the most left-leaning district in one of the most left-leaning counties in our state. They're abandoning the Democratic Party because apparently they can't keep their hands off of kids, and I don't understand it. Parents are outraged. Don't try to change my kid's gender. Don't sexualize their educational content. Leave my kids alone. Leave my family alone. And then we can argue about money and economics and all this other stuff. Right now, parents and Floridians, family people are just revolting against the Democratic Party. And it's the D's that are tone deaf right now.
Yeah, and there's two things that you said that I want to talk about. The first is, them being tone dead. And it's funny because they're continuing down the same path as the previous 40 years. And it recently came out that in the first quarter, they didn't even raise $1 million for the Florida Democratic Party, which is absolutely pathetic. How do you not even raise $1 million? That's just a joke. But another thing is, you talk about, the parents not wanting these certain things happening. And there's been a lot of talk lately about if we should fight the culture war in the Republican Party. And I think the culture war is one of the most important things that we can do to fight back against a lot of this craziness. Because if we allow the left to continue to radicalize our children, the children in the country, we're not going to be able to win elections, in a decade or so. And our country is just going to be overrun in every single city. We're going to have situations like New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles. That's going to be across the United States if we don't fight and win this culture war. So I think fighting and winning the culture war is one of the most important things that we can do.
It's something that people don't talk about, but they vote about. Ask Bud Light.
Yeah.
Hey guys, speaking of fighting, I'm going to throw you guys a curveball. I know that before the show we kind of discussed what we're going to talk about, and we did not really mention this, but I just want to see your thoughts on this. It's just because, I think we're right in the heart of it, okay? So I am personally getting annoyed on supporters of Trump bashing DeSantis and supporters of DeSantis bashing Trump. It's just what is this? I think the Democrats are having a field day. They're enjoying this. They're the only winners in this. What do you guys think? Any comments on that? Sorry to put you on the spot, by the way.
John, you want to take a stab first?
Is there things that are,
Sure.
is there things that are
maybe on the record, but it's just like it's just getting silly. I think I don't know. It's just that's just me.
Well, here's the thing. I think that people are, I think everyone is annoyed by it, right? Because it's unnecessary. Neither one of them, I don't, Trump, DeSantis was shining bright before any of this started going off, right? As the governor of Florida, everyone was in love with him. We talked about this on my show at length on sanctions, and everybody loves him. Everybody loved DeSantis. Everybody in Florida loved DeSantis. He crushed Charlie Crist. DeSantis didn't have to do anything negative. He could have stayed quiet. And I think that his people were saying, hey, you got to fight Trump. Don't let him beat you. Don't let him beat you up. Don't let him say things. And you got to respond. You got to respond. His numbers were best when he was just not responding. He was just managing the state. And managing the state is what he has been best at. He's not the most eloquent guy. He is a hard charger. He's a great governor. He is a great speaker. But he's not like, I mean, he has weaknesses just like every single person, right? And Trump is the same way. Trump, that you have your base, right? Nobody's abandoning you. You do not have to get desperate and start attacking DeSantis. At worst case scenario, and this is my opinion, I'm speculating here. I know that things can change, but I imagine that the only state that he's at risk of losing is some of these northeastern liberal states where you have people that say they're Republicans, like Katzinger, who's really a hard left Democrat. But maybe you lose Florida, but you're gonna win the primary. Put it on autopilot. Keep going out there. Keep inspiring the people. And if you're DeSantis and you want to run for president, keep being a great governor. There are two ships that shouldn't be colliding, but we all know that that's going to happen with Trump, right? I mean, you can't deny it. Trump is going to come. He's going to point his bow right at you, and he's going to drive right into you. And so I don't think that it's smart for DeSantis to kind of point his guns at Trump, because he's not going to win at that game. You know, I mean, I can get into the ring with Floyd Mayweather. That might not be my best chance at beating him at something.
Yeah, and you know, the reason I bring this up is because we saw this in the last election. In the last election in Florida, there was people like Stephanie Murphy, people like Charlie Crist, people like Val Demings, and it seems like any of them could have run for governor, right? Any of them could have run for U.S. Senate, and it seems like they all like divided and conquered, right? They did not fight each other. They did not go after each other. They said like, hey, let's work together. But in the Republican Party, and you know, reminder, my race, Florida 9, there was about 8 or 9 candidates at one point, and in the end, we could not win that seat, right? So it's like, how do we work together as Republicans to beat the Democrats, not beat each other up?
Yeah, so one of the things I'd like to talk about briefly is, you know, I think that for Trump, one of the biggest things that turned a lot of people off was right before the midterms, about a month before, is when he started going after Governor DeSantis. Now, I think if he would have waited until either Governor DeSantis, you know, came out and said, well, I'm thinking and maybe I might run, or he actually announced that he was going to run, and then, okay, now we go back and forth. But I think for Trump, he saw, you know, the polling, and to him, that was like, oh my gosh, even though we're basically a year and a half out, to him, it was like, oh, I got to start attacking right now, right away. Yeah. Where I think if he would have just let it be, I still think that at this point, because he's up in the polls right now, I still think that he would have been up in the polls if he would have just let it be. Because the election, Governor DeSantis was riding high, you know, everybody, his name recognition was up there. So his polling was doing really, really well. And I think for Trump, he sort of started, I don't want to say panicking, but he sort of looked at it and thought that he had to start attacking right away, which I don't think was what was necessary. But I think the biggest thing that's going to happen is in August, and Jose, you know, this is something that I want to talk with you about. But the first debate coming up in August is really when we'll get to see sort of how Governor DeSantis will play on the national stage, because we've seen Trump on the national stage. We know how he debates and what he's going to say and what he's going to do. So it'll be interesting to watch Governor DeSantis up on the debate stage, as well as the rest of the field. I still think it's just a two-party race at this moment. But just seeing Governor DeSantis and the comparison, because right now, if they go based off of how they did the polling in 2016 and the debates, the top people are going to be in the middle, and everybody else is going to be spanned out. So I think it's going to be a lot of focus and attention on the two of them. Exactly.
That's
yep.
gonna be, I don't even know that I can watch it. I don't even know that I can bear to watch it. It's going to be a bloodbath. You could be watching from 100 miles away on TV, and you're still going to get blood on your shirt. I don't know that I can even afford to watch it. It's going to be. We already know what's going to happen, right? I mean, it's just going to be brutal, and everybody else is just going to disappear and fade away into the night. If I were Nikki Haley, I wouldn't even go. There's no point. What are you're gonna be like? Excuse me, gentlemen. Why, you guys are beating the crap out of each other. Can I get a word in? And she's just gonna look pathetic. Everybody else is small.
And that's the 2016 primary where you had people, on the different ends of the stages where they got asked one or two questions for 30 seconds, and the rest of the time it was, Trump, Bush, Rubio, and then Christie got in there a couple of times, and everybody else kind of had to shout and to try to get in there. But yeah, I personally, to me, I don't like the personal attacks. I don't like certain things that are going on. I prefer to keep everything policy based. That's just me. But yeah, I look forward to some really great debates in a couple months.
It's too bad that the Democrats aren't going to debate, because it'd be great to see a yoga instructor, a man with dementia, and another guy who's going to talk about conspiracy theories. I mean, those three people, that's an entertaining now for debates and policy. It's all crazy, but nonetheless, it'll be fun to watch. It would.
Yeah. What's funny is RFK is running to the right of some of even the Republican candidate. It's crazy. Some of the stuff he says, I'm like, holy crap, why is this guy not running? Yeah. So it's hilarious.
To be honest, I'm paying attention to Vivek. I don't even know how to say his last name. Ramaswamy.
He's great.
Yeah. So I pay attention to him. I pay attention to him, and I pay attention to Robert Kennedy. Listen, the reason Kennedy, he's saying some things that make sense, but not only that, listen, keep in mind, they killed his father. They did not want his father to be president, and they killed his grandfather, right? And I think JFK was a Democrat, but I think JFK today would be a Republican, right? Mm-hmm. So those are the things to keep in mind. Why did they kill his uncle? Why did they kill his father? So I think he's making a lot of sense. But guys, I think that's the end of our show.
His cousin, right? His cousin, JFK Jr. was his cousin, right? JFK, the other Kennedy who died in the airplane crash. Oh, nobody killed him. I'm sorry. The plane crash.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, that's his cousin. Yep.
So, I mean, if you're a Kennedy involved in politics, I mean, apparently only Ted Kennedy survived, and it's because he killed somebody else.
Yeah, that's one cursed family.
Yep. Anyways, guys, it's the end of our show. Any final thoughts? Joseph, go.
I think the show's been great. Really enjoyed discussing the big legislative wins this session. Like I said, I'm looking forward to a fun primary, especially with the debates coming up, and I hope everyone keeps it on the policy side, and I will look forward to watching those debates with y'all.
John?
Yeah, guys, thank you for having me very much. I really appreciate it. You guys are going to have to come on my show to have the discussions. We'll have 4 cubes up there, but please come on my show and join me.
Guys, and what I want to share with you guys is if you want to be on the show, a guest on the show, message us on our Facebook page, the J&J Show. And the one last thing, unless you want to end up like this, please make sure that you stay attuned as to what's happening in your community. Go read the Constitution and spread that gospel. Thank you, guys, and have a good night.
Goodbye.
Amen. Good night.